welcome back to the channel. Today's going to be a pretty interesting one. It's the conversation everyone's been wanting to have. It is what went down with the ride listing on the Maiar exchange. Now, this was a very, very interesting time because it was a huge disappointment for all the investors. I mean, let's be honest, that's what it was. You had people coming in and using bots to snipe and then sell and push up the price. Classic pump and dump. And on top of that, you had so many people accessing the exchange at the same time, just like before, that it was moving extremely slow. Shard 1 was completely overwhelmed, so many people couldn't even get transactions through, and when they did buy, they couldn't sell. So it was a nightmare. There was a lot of things that went wrong with this. And on top of all of that, you had people taking massive, massive risk. So we got a lot to cover. We're going to cover all these things. Essentially, our topic of conversation is going to be bots. After that, it's going to be, what is it going to be? I had written all this down. Hold on. Let me look at it. Let's get this right. It's in the thumbnail. You already saw it. It's going to be bots. It's going to be slippage. It's going to be anger and value. Okay, so this is why. Bots, we'll talk about what happened and caused this, right? What are my thoughts on that? Then we'll talk about slippage, because slippage is very synonymous with risk, and people took unbelievable risk with this that just shocked me, considering I always tell you to manage risk. But then again, not all the people who participated watched my stuff. You know, I only have, 7,000 subscribers on YouTube and 10 to 12,000 on Twitter. So if that's the case, then, there was like 1 million people trying to buy, and that's a lot more people than are following me. So they're not always getting all this information. But for those of you that were here, I really hope even one person was helped with the constant talk of risk management, because it's super important. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. We're going to get into this, and we're going to cover pretty much every topic that I think is relevant from this entire debacle. Okay, first things first, bots. All right, let's understand what a bot really is, okay? A bot, it's quite simple. It is an automation. It is a script or a piece of code that is running and performing an action. Now, normally, these scripts can be either executed manually at whatever interval you want. So let's say your script is trying to kick off a transaction. You can have it, you can have a bunch of different scripts with the different transactions, and you can execute them manually to have them send the commands. Smarter way to do it would be to create code that essentially goes through a full set of instructions, and it's doing it on a loop. And you can even have responses, and based on those responses, you set them as variables, and then different actions are taken. So for example, if you are trying to submit a transaction and that transaction fails, then you detect the failure and you retry that transaction a certain number of times or indefinitely. If you you don't just move on to the other transactions right before the first one succeeds. You can tell your bot to do that. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can essentially just have it doing this on some type of timer. So let's say your retry interval is set to 1 second or 2 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Well, that means that those transactions will start going through once every 10 seconds, or at least they'll be attempted. For a human being to do that, it may not be possible to do all of that in 5 or 10 seconds. So you're already at a disadvantage when it comes to bots. The other thing is the bots are not going through the DEX. They're not going through the website. Now, with the website, you have another set of issues, right? That is, well, you know what? Before we do any of this, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, do all that stuff. I forgot to say it, but do it. It helps, and that's the only way we're going to get information to more people. So make sure you do that. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Get it done. All right. So the bots are basically going through and doing these set of instructions, and they're doing stuff that you as a human being can't. By bypassing the exchange, there's certain things that happen, right? When you're hitting the website, you have to connect with your wallet, right? You have to authorize the connection. Then you have to browse to the right section. You have to, choose your assets. You have to look at the values for price, all that stuff. And then you have to hit swap. Then you have to authenticate, and you have to submit your keys and all that. And it's a process. It takes time. Well, you're also at the mercy of certain things on the website. For instance, the infrastructure. Every website has its own infrastructure. They have subnets. They have different gateways. They have just web servers behind them, maybe a database server, all kinds of stuff that's running. And the platform that you're using is using all of those. If that gets overwhelmed, well, then you have a bottleneck before you even get to submitting a transaction. And that bottleneck did exist to some degree, because when the launch came on, one of the things that I was doing is I was pinging the website to see what's my latency, right? So I ping the website and I see that my latency is like 30 seconds to 45 seconds. And I'm like, oh, that's good. That's great. But that was before the launch. And then once the launch started, I see that my latency is up to 250 milliseconds. That's not good. That's really bad. 250 milliseconds latency means that there's a lot of heavy load coming onto that server and it is responding slower to my messages. Well, 250 milliseconds may not seem like a lot, but that's plenty of time for a bot to, not have to waste that time and be the first one in. So there are certain things like that that are worth checking on. Run a continuous ping on the website for maybe 30 seconds before you decide to start using it, or have it running on another command prompt window and see what happens. There are certain things that you should do and learn. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Like learn how to write a continuous ping, learn how to interpret the results. You have to take time to pick up on these things and learn them, because you're in crypto and crypto is technical, meaning that if you want to have an edge, you have to be technical. So get a little technical. Now, one of the things that really makes this difficult is that as these issues exist and you have a lot of demand, people forget the issues exist. Anyone who was here for the initial launch and who was here for, the initial launch of the DEX, and then when we had the APR changes, you knew that when things came back online, that for the first few hours, it was extremely throttled. There were so many people trying to do their transactions at the same time that things went very slow, and you might have multiple failed transactions. So pretty much, if that's even a possibility, the worst thing that you would want to do is to buy immediately and then not be able to sell. So the smart thing to do is to avoid the FOMO and wait. That's it. Maybe do something like this, right? When you connect, try doing a very small transaction. Does it go through, right? Do you see that the slippage fails? Do you then just sit there and monitor the price for a little bit and see what's happening? There's a lot of different things that you can do, and people need to do those things. Now, as far as the people who ran these bots, one of them was the guy who runs the staking agency. The other one, I'm not going to publicly name, and there's a reason for that, right? Because unless he comes out and publicly names himself, it's not my responsibility to do that. A lot of people were asking me to do that. They were asking Wesley to do that. And I'm just like, dude, look, if someone like one of us who has thousands of followers posts something like that online, like this is the person and blah, 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 well, then basically what's going to end up happening is that everyone is just going to attack that person, right? And people will be like, oh, well, we should do that. They deserve it and blah, blah, blah. And I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think that what was done was incredibly unethical. It was wrong. But at the end of the day, we have to remember we're in DeFi, and these things are not a crime. So that means your traditional idea of right and wrong has to be adjusted slightly. When people do things like this, the way that I look at it is like this. Okay, this person did something extremely unethical. I would never do this. I can't believe they did this. This is wrong. I don't want anything to do with this person. That would be how I think initially, right? I'd be mad. I'd want them called out. But then I also think about it like this, what's more important, to get that anger out or to foster a community where someone who finds an exploit and implements that exploit and gets away with a bunch of money actually considers, maybe I messed up and I should come back and give back what I can that belongs to me and, give it back and do what's right here, right? If anyone thinks that if I'm going to consider doing that, I'm going to get publicly shamed, humiliated, and called out, they're never going to do that. They're just going to vanish. They're going to disappear. This is DeFi. There's no KYC. They don't have to come back, right? Returning money here is not a requirement. They can leave and they can just live off the money. They can do whatever they want. That's the space we're in. So me, being someone who's investigating and trying to figure things out, the end goal for me is to see, is there anything I can do to help to recover some of this money? That's what I'm thinking. I don't care about finding out who the person is so that I can bash them online. Like, that's short-sighted and idiotic, to be completely frank with you, in my opinion. That's what I think. I think the end goal should be someone who did this is highly intelligent, used their intelligence for the wrong reasons, they did something extremely unethical, but they could be a big asset if they find other vulnerabilities like this and help secure the network. Right? if those are the people that are with you instead of against you, then you are in a very, very good position to protect yourself from people like that in the future. So this is very, very true. Even in the traditional world, you see a lot of times that people hack into companies and steal a lot of money and all that stuff, and then they get hired as pen testers and get paid a lot of money to make sure that nobody else can do something like that. Sometimes they do it after their jail sentence because what they do is illegal. In this case, you're in an unregulated market. It's not illegal. So you have to try to figure out, how can we as a community benefit from this in the future if we plan to be here longer? Now, obviously, if you're someone who lost a lot and you're pissed about it and you don't plan to stay in the community any longer, like, I feel for you. But part of the reason that I did things the way I did was to try to help you. That was the reason. Now, keeping that in mind, the fact is, I don't really think that I needed to do anything, because at the end of the day, I truly feel that Elrond was doing all the investigation on their own. They were trying their best to locate whoever was responsible for this and contact them and begin negotiations and all that kind of stuff. That's what I think was happening behind the scenes. And if that's the case, then they had it on, they were on top of everything. They had everyone's back and they did it right, even though at the time that all this happened, people were accusing them of being a part of it, which I couldn't believe that people were doing. I'm like, some of these people have been here for so long. They know this team. They've probably talked to some of them, and they think this. So I was kind of surprised by that, but I understand where it came from. It came from a place of anger, and anger is a powerful thing. So I would just say this, right? To avoid the anger, right? To avoid getting there. This was supposed to be about bots, slippage, anger, and value. To avoid getting to the stage of anger, control the risk in the slippage section, right? You should never be putting 50% slippage. Never. I can't think of a reason why you would need to do that. The only reason I could think of is something is dropping massively and you're trying your best to sell. And even in that scenario, it's like, 50% slippage means that you might sell it for 50% lower than the current price, which is, I don't know. In my opinion, it's a massive, massive risk. If you're trying to sell something with 50% slippage, that means you took too much risk to begin with. So just be careful with the risk. Do your risk management. The smart thing to do with this launch was simply to wait and to watch and see what happened. That's what I did, because I remember what happened with the MEX launch, how it went straight up and then it came back down quite significantly and then went sideways. Like, I remember that. I was there for it. I actually lost a little bit of, I lost a good amount of my locked MEX on that first launch day through liquidity staking. So I was already aware of what could happen. Then on top of that, I remembered what happened when we had the APR changes and everyone came back on. I couldn't get a transaction through. So I remembered these things, and I know that the DEX has a ways to go before these issues are solved, which means it's very possible we're going to see the same kind of thing happen during the ride launch. So I just played it safe. I managed my risk. I only tried to buy with like a small amount of money. When those transactions didn't go through, then I just watched the price and I started seeing that the amount of ride that you're getting per EGLD kept dropping. And if it kept dropping that quickly, something was wrong. So I just didn't bother with it. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to mess with it. I did a continuous ping. I saw that the latency was really high. So I knew a lot of people were on and I knew something weird was going on. So I just avoided it for a while, and it turned out to be a great decision because it was just instinct. Like, okay, these 2-3 things that I'm looking at seem a little weird. I'm not going to get involved. And I just waited. Sometimes you have to do that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to buy, just like everyone else. I thought that getting it at 4 or 5 cents, 10 cents is I'm going to make a lot of money off of this. Everyone was thinking that, but the problem is if everyone's thinking that, everyone's trying to buy, and if it's at 5 cents, everyone's okay with 50% slippage because they think they're only going to pay 10 cents or 7.5 cents or whatever it is. But in reality, what screwed a lot of people with the slippage is that price was moving so quickly that when you saw the price and then you selected 50% slippage, by the time you went down and clicked swap, the price had changed. It had already gone up so high and you didn't notice it. And I think that's what happened. I think that screwed a lot of people because the price ended up going up really high. They didn't check to see what the conversion rate was or the dollar price was by going on the little I or whatever, which I think is something that can be improved. I don't think you should have to go to that little I to see the dollar price. I think it should be clearly displayed. So that's something that I think the team can edit, like the swap UI very slightly, just to give all the information visible before you do the swap. So that's something possible. And, I think people just need to be more vigilant about what they're doing with their money. I think this caused a lot of greed on all sides. The bot guys were super greedy. The people that were coming in and just putting super high slippage were being, unfortunately, quite greedy. They were just trying to get whatever they could at a low price and not considering the risk. And then, the dude who ran the first bot, unbelievably greedy, because what he was doing was just literally selling back for massive profits. And when you're doing that, you know exactly what you're doing. So I don't agree with it. I am very, very grateful that he returned a portion of the funds that he could, what he was able to do based on the messages that I've read. Now, for any more detail on who ran the bot and all those things and all this thing, don't bother asking me in my YouTube comments. Don't bother asking me on Twitter. I told you, I'm not getting involved in that. That's not the concern. My concern is that in the future, if something like this happens, someone knows they can come back, return money, and be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that goes for the people involved in this, in these bots as well. Directly to them, you're very skilled. You're highly skilled, highly technical, and you have skills that could make Elrond a lot better. And to be honest with you, if you applied them that way, well, you wouldn't need to do this, because the value that you would bring and the rest of the community already brings and the team brings, it can take this asset to 1 billion people or more. That's a real possibility, which means that if it gets there, what are you doing this for? You're just slowing it down. You don't need to do this. Whatever your financial goals are, if you have the kind of capital you have, you'll get there. Just invest it wisely. You don't need it right away. You might think, oh, I'll never see this kind of money again unless I use a damn bot. No, that's not true. Use your intelligence. You already have it. That's just my 2 cents for them. I think what they did was really, really unethical. It was terribly bad. In the real world, or not in the real world, but in the traditional financial world, they would have gone to jail for this. So the fact that we're in an unregulated market is the only reason they even had the balls to do this. But the truth of the matter is that this could have ruined their lives if it was in a traditional financial market, if something like this was done. Now, granted, that's not to say that stuff like this doesn't happen in traditional financial markets and people don't go to jail for it or anything. There's insider trading all the time and most people don't get arrested for it. So this wasn't necessarily insider trading, because this was actually like finding a way to manipulate the shares, which is probably what hedge funds do, like mess with the supply and stuff. I really don't know. But I'm just saying, I think in reality, this kind of thing probably happens in the financial market in very different ways where, like during an IPO or something like that. I'm not really sure how it happens, but it's a possibility that it does. Right now, I think what we as a community need to do is just come together again. That's what's important. All right. That's going to get rid of the anger. It's going to get rid of everything else. And for anyone who's still down in funds, you're going to be able to recover, I don't know what portion of them, but at least something from what Elrond was able to recover. So I think that that's a really fortunate thing, because in most DeFi spaces, that would never happen. People would just disappear with all the money and you'd never see them again. And I think it's important that we foster a community that when something like this happens, we make sure that the people who do it feel comfortable coming back, returning the money, and then helping to stop something like this from happening in the future. That's my opinion. Now, the next thing regarding anger, I would say is this, right? The only thing I would recommend is don't place blame before you know what's going on. I saw a lot of people come and place blame towards the actual Elrond team, which was totally unfounded. They didn't have anything to do with this. The transactions made that clear. The way they handled it made it clear. The fact that they recovered money made it clear. I mean, everything made that clear. They were working hard to make sure that they could recoup as much as possible from the people who ran the bot, and they're still likely working on that to some degree. And then on top of that, they've taken this as a learning lesson and treated it as a security incident and come up with methods that they can improve things. Now, if you didn't understand what really happened with the bots, we'll look into that very, very briefly. Okay, so we're going to switch over to full screen mode. So this was the first bot that ran. All right, the first thing that this bot did is take 5,600 EGLD and buy 10.79 million ride. Okay, now we see that this account bought 10.79 million ride, but then look what happened after. Okay, the bottom number is what's being sold. The top number is what's being bought, right? That's the swap. He's right here, he's swapping EGLD for ride. Right here, he's swapping ride for EGLD. So if you go down here, you'll see as soon as this 10 million ride is purchased, then what happens? Well, now he's selling 100,000 ride for 1,500 e-gold. He just bought 10 million for 5,600. He's selling 100,000 for 1,500. Then he's selling 900,000 for 13,500, already more than doubling his just insane profit very, very quickly. And this is just coming from the people that have their slippage high and are trying their best to buy. They're all getting screwed. It's completely burning the market. And this continues. This is only 5 transactions. It went on for like 2 pages. I didn't look at all of them because what's the point? You know, I know what happened already. So that's number 1. This caused the pump and dump. Okay. Number 2, we have what was done by the staking agency. And basically what this was not as bad as far as impact goes, but it's still bad. I mean, let's be real. It's still bad. Okay. So 6.914 million ride for 10,000 e-gold. Okay. So 10,000 e-gold, you got 6.9 million ride. Well, then what happened here is we see 1.58 million ride is sold out of 6 million. So that means if we have a total of 6.91 million ride and we sell 1.58 million ride, that means he's walking away with 5.33 million ride, and he's walking away with an extra 5,500 e-gold. That's one hell of a profit for 2 trades. That's what happened. And then all the ride that was left over, all right, once again, keep it in mind. We got to remember that number. 5.33 million ride was then distributed to the friends who, you know, participated in that initial investment. So this, in my opinion, worries me because not only do we now have millions of ride that these people are holding, they purchased at a fraction of the cost, meaning that there's a lot of sell pressure. This is all ride that was distributed to 30 different people. This person has 622,000. Ride is like what? Like right now it's at $1.89. So if this guy is holding, whoever this person is, right, that got 712,000 ride, okay? 712,000, we multiply that by 1.90. That means he's holding $1.35 million in ride right now. Right? These people got it at a fraction of the cost. I would be very worried that some of this ride will start hitting the market. They'll start coming in and trying to swap it for e-gold. So right now I'm being very cautious with ride because I know that this was done and this amount of ride is still out there until I see that it's either been recovered or the price has stabilized to a point, or, you know, we trace their accounts and we see that, okay, they've already swapped some of it or whatever. It's a worry to me that this much ride is out. Now, that doesn't really apply to the first one because for the first one, I believe not too much ride was left over and that was already recovered, and pretty much what left was e-gold. So that also still worries me to a sense with e-gold. I think out of a total of 120,000 e-gold or something, like 40,000 e-gold was recovered, meaning that there's still like, what, 80,000 e-gold that was not recovered that I guess belonged to other people. Now, if that's the case, I would think that at a certain point, the people who did this likely, you know, if they're not going to return anything and they were friends of the people who executed or orchestrated this, well, then chances are they're going to sell their e-gold at some point, right? They're going to want to sell it if they just did this for the money, which means that there's a good possibility that there's 80,000 e-gold out there that at a certain point is going to hit the market. I would assume that when the price goes up to like 350, 400, 450, 500, somewhere around there again, when we reach those levels again, which we will, but when we reach those levels again, I'm going to expect a pretty big dump, right? I'm going to expect a dump to take us back like 20, 30%. And I think that dump may come from this 40,000 e-gold or 80,000 e-gold that was pulled and essentially stolen from the people who tried to invest. I mean, there's blame on all sides, so I hate using that word because it's not a crime, but technically, in my eyes, ethically, this seems like theft. And then on top of that, you know, you have, it was a whole mess, man. This was a nightmare. This was a mess. It's very disappointing because this could have gone so well if they didn't use bots. Yeah, it really could have. The good thing about all of this now is that Elrond is taking the proper action. They're seeing everything that was done and how this was orchestrated, how this was executed, how can they avoid it in the future. And I love the idea that they came up with, right? One of their ideas, let me go back to full screen here. One of their ideas was that you pre-stake. So let's say you want to buy like $3,000 worth of a new token, right? You pre-stake that $3,000 and you get that token at a certain price for pre-staking it. So if that's the way they're going to do it, that makes a lot more sense, because then it makes it easier to calculate price based on all the people staking. And then it makes those people who staked longer during that pre-stake time, makes them able to get more of that initial supply than people who didn't do the staking. I think that's a great way to do it. You lock your funds, you get the value when launch goes. Nobody has a chance to run bots. None of that stuff exists. Honestly, if you're going to scale this to 1 billion people, we need to think of ways to do things safely. DeFi right now is not as safe as it can be. And it's like that across the board. There is no real DeFi space that you can go into where you're going to feel 100% safe as an investor. It's just not going to happen. If you are feeling that way, you have a false sense of security, and that false sense of security is going to lead you to take risks that are going to burn you. So you have to be very, very, very cognizant of the risk. As a community and as a project, I think Elrond can change that. I think in order to get 1 billion people onto this platform needs to be better than the rest. It needs to not only be better, it needs to be more ethical. It needs to have more controls and security for people. And if we can do those things, people will come. People will realize that, hey, I can go on here and I don't have to worry about getting screwed on a new launch. I can actually participate. There's a way for me to participate that I feel comfortable with. More people will get onboarded to things like that. Traditional financial people keep their money in banks because they feel safe, even though they're being stolen from. It's just they're getting stolen from blindly. They don't know they're getting stolen from. When you're losing a lot of money in an instant, it's a lot more damaging to your psyche than if you're losing that same amount of money over a long period of time, right? If you're losing it over a long period of time, it doesn't matter to you as much. You don't realize it. You almost ignore it. But when you're doing that to millions of people, well, suddenly you realize why banks want you to put money in the bank, right? So they can lend out against it and generate debt and destroy your purchasing power while they're at it. That's pretty much what central banks and the Fed do. But the goal here should be now moving forward to make sure that we as a community give feedback to the team and let them know, hey, these are some ideas I had. Is there anything like this that can be implemented? Let them know. What are some things that might have helped you? Give them ideas. Giving them feedback and ideas is going to help. I'm going to do the same. I might even set up my own observer node and figure out how, get a whole copy of the blockchain, write queries, write things that allow me to analyze patterns and data, and possibly try to, do some data analytics and figure out, can I see things that maybe aren't being seen because people don't have, my experience in doing this type of data analytics work. So I might do that. It's a possibility. I haven't had time. I don't have much time, right? The fact of the matter is I work full time. My father-in-law has dementia and I help take care of him pretty much all the time. So it's difficult for me to put time towards, YouTube and Twitter, and then try to, learn new coding languages and create my own monitoring systems and data analytics and warehousing. It's all a lot of work. So I may or may not be able to do it, but I'll try to do it. It might be a good side hobby to help protect us against this kind of stuff just from the outside. Okay, anger. The next thing I'll say about anger is this, take your anger and reflect upon it. You should definitely be angry at the people who did this. I don't disagree with you for being angry at them. I am too. But you should also realize that having those people working with us to secure the network is more valuable for the future, right? The anger, at the end of the day, you can be angry about them doing this, or you can be angry about yourself using high slippage, or be angry that, you couldn't get, shard 1 was down or shard 1 was so congested that you couldn't get your transactions through. You could be angry about a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, anger is not really going to help you get anywhere. I want to see where this project's going to go 5 years from now, and how many people are going to be using it, and how many pairs are going to be on the DEX, and how much more value we can generate as a whole. And to get there, I have to try to focus on the right things. And right now, what I would love to see actually is formal apologies from the people involved directly to the team and directly to the community that they really screwed by doing this. I would like to see that, and I would like to have some type of commitment from them that they're going to try to make this up by ensuring that they look for and help secure any possible gaps that could exist and allow people to do things like this in future, and possibly even, help the team figure out what are some things that could have been in place that may have stopped them from being able to do this. All of these things, if things move in that direction, I'll be I mean, it's weird to say okay with it. It'll be a start. It'll start to build trust. But they have a long way to go. But that's what I'll say. Just ethically and morally, try to do what's right all the time. And always, always, always manage your risk. This goes to all the investors. Ethically and morally do what's right. That goes to the guys running the bots. You guys know you messed up. You may think, oh, but it's not illegal. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's not illegal by law, right? It's illegal by my morals and my ethics. I would never do that. I could take the time to learn how to write everything that you wrote because I have the development knowledge and I could probably do it myself, but I don't have the time to do that, right? So because of that, you're going to take advantage of me and everyone else, right? Because I'm taking care of my father-in-law's dementia. I mean, come on, think about other people. Think about other people, think about what you're doing, and use your intelligence for good. It's that simple. Like, you live one life. You either do good things while you're here or you don't. Do good things. I believe in karma. You do good things will happen to you. You do bad things, it's going to come back and bite you. That's just how it works. All right. Finally, we'll talk about value. Because now this is the most confusing thing. What is Ride worth? Goodness. What is it worth? Do you know what it's worth? You're going to tell me it's worth whatever the price is, right? So right now the price is $1.89. Is it worth $1.89? I don't know. All right, let's take a look. Let's go to the chart. So here's the chart. Why can you not see? Okay, hold on. I gotta get you guys to see the price. Maybe I need to be on full screen. Okay, here we go. So we're on ARDA. We're looking at the chart. Basically, right now, it's trading at $1.89. Now, why the sudden spike? I mean, that's pretty simple. It's because we had reward changes in the EGLD farm. That's now the most profitable farm for you to generate LockMax. Now, after that, the price shoots up. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that a lot of people put liquidity into EGLD, and in order to do that, they had to buy Ride. Can I give Ride a valuation based on that? Personally, I can't. Because to me, that is not proving value for Ride. That is proving value for LockMax, right? If people are doing that so they can earn LockMax, well, then this rise technically is to generate LockMax. It's not because people wanted to buy Ride. Otherwise, they would have bought it when it was down here, right? They would have bought it when it was lower before this happened. But it looks like the trend here was down and starting to come up until we had that news. Then it shot. So in reality, I'm not really sure what would have happened without that news, which is making it difficult for me to value it at these prices. So what I would say is this, right? What other information do I have? Let's look at the chart very, very logically, all right? We're not going to look at this chart like Moon Boys. We're not going to try to say that, Ride's going to go to this price or that price. We're just going to look at things realistically. That's, I think, the best thing to do. So first things first. When we look at this and we're looking at it realistically, well, we know one thing. We know that the price shot up here to $7, right? I think more like $7.74 or something like that, or $7.70. So let's take our Fibonacci retracement and let's set that to $7.70. Okay? Now, if we set that to $7.70, you'll see what happens is that the price of Ride right now is actually far below the golden pocket, right? Now, what's interesting about this is that normally when you have a proper listing and you don't have anything crazy like these pumps and dumps going on with people bringing in mass liquidity, which it does happen often, but when you don't, what you end up seeing is that the price will usually retrace over a longer period of time towards the golden pocket, right? Which tells me that if $7 was a true valuation, $7.70, well, then the price should have come down to about $2.95. Because that didn't happen, I know for a fact that, or not for a fact, but I have pretty good authority to say that it's possible that $7.70 was not what it was worth, right? So if that's the case, where can I take it? Well, I'll take it about, 50x, right? Is that right? So 0.05 times 50 is about 250. So let's take it to $2.50 and see what we come up with. Well, when we do this and now expand our fib and look at the numbers, well, we're still not at the golden pocket, but there's extenuating circumstances here that we have to take into consideration. Okay, we got to take them into consideration. The first thing we see here when we do this is that this actually looks like it's showing some decent levels. It's not looking like a terrible way to analyze this, right? And we're going to look at it at the hourly so you can see it a little bit better. Look at what you're seeing now. What you're seeing now is that the price went up all the way to 770, but then when it dipped, it hit that golden pocket area, right? That's where it got support. So let's zoom in now to the golden pocket and ignore everything above 250, right? This is assuming 250 was a more sustainable all-time high, right? If $2 was the all-time high, this would be a little lower. But to put our Fibonacci where we're getting support right now would mean that it would have had to have been, that would mean it could have gone up to $3 naturally. I don't know. I think $2 50x or 250 at 50x is a pretty decent prediction of what may have happened, maybe, with people ready to buy with that much slippage if you didn't have people coming in with millions and millions of dollars. So in this scenario, if it did come down and touch this like 96 cent level, and this was our actual golden pocket or one that we can work with, well, we start to see a couple of things in this chart that make sense on the hourly. Okay, well, first we see that we got support here, we came back, and we actually bounced past this level, this $382.64 level, then we came back here. This here looks like resistance. Okay, let me actually switch to a different color so you can see this better. How the hell do I switch to a different color? Okay, yellow, and visibility, thickness, there we go, that's better. Okay, so let's just assume that this here is that resistance. We saw that. Well, next, what do we see? We saw the price go down here. It fell below this green line, which is $1.37, and well, that hit resistance there. Then we came back, we hit resistance again on this fib line. Then we went down, we traded sideways, and look, resistance again. Here, resistance again. We came down, where did we get support? We got it on this fib line, $1.37 once again. Then we broke through, once again, resistance here. So this is telling me that this chart is at least giving me what appear to be support and resistance levels. It's still very early to know, are these actual support and resistance levels? But according to this is telling me, based on what's happening right now, if we hit resistance on this area every other time, but the liquidity APR changes are what's causing it to break out, well, then it's a possibility that once people are at a point where they want to like compound or they want to do anything like that, I don't know. I don't really know what's going to happen, but it wouldn't shock me that this comes back and retraces to like around $1.63, even if it's just the people who got all that cheap ride, from this right here. Like when all of this ride was distributed by, a staking agency guy, basically these people are in massive profit. They got cheap ride. So if they got all this ride and it's, we don't really know what's going to happen to it yet, in my opinion, this could hit the market at any time. And if that's a possibility, well, then we could definitely see them waiting to pick a spot until they start selling. So I'd be careful of that. The other thing I'd be careful of, now keep in mind, I'm not trying to be like bearish on here. I'm trying to be realistic, right? You have to be realistic. What's happening right now is because of liquidity. That's what it is. It's because people want lock max rewards at the highest APR. That's a fact. That's why this price went up. That's why people are buying it right now. I have to look at other things to figure out, okay, if these are the people buying it, who's going to be selling it? Who's going to be the one who's going to want to take the EGLD profits out of here? Well, I would also look at the actual token information. The first thing we know is that 50 million ride was available during the lottery at a price of 4 cents. Okay, we know this. This is completely transparent. Everyone's aware of this. Now, the next thing that we see here is that there was a private sale at a certain point for 2 cents. So actually half the price of the lottery. Holoride raised $4 million from that private sale. It was a total of 200 million tokens, and it had an 18-month vesting period with a quarterly release. So that means on average, if we're taking the average here, that means that if you have 200 million tokens, so the first thing you look at is how many quarters are you going to have, right? If you are doing a quarterly release at 18-month vest, right? That's what you're looking at right here. Well, that means in 18 months you have 6 quarters, right? A quarter is 3 months. That means that 200 million tokens will be released in a total of 6 quarters. So you take 200 million tokens, you divide that by 6 quarters. That means every 3 months, there will on average be about 33.3 million ride entering the market. right, to whoever did the private sale. That doesn't mean they're going to sell it, right? The private sale could be to longtime investors, and this could be their investment to be able to buy at this price. That's how they're investing their money. Very, very possible. If that's the case, they may not sell until $10, $20, or they might just hold for a long time. We don't know. But it's a risk because right now the circulating supply is listed at 130 million. We know that 50 million of that 130 million are the tokens that went for sale and are in the Maiar DEX. Okay, so if 150 million is the total and you have 30 million of that is basically, sorry, I'm getting tired, man. So if you have 130 million total circulating supply, and out of that, 50 million is the total that you did in the lottery, that means there's 80 million unaccounted for. That's what it means. More than likely that 80 million, 30, 60, 80, somewhere around there is 3 vesting cycles or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it could have already vested if the token just went live. So I'm not really sure about this, but all I'm saying is that I see sell pressure. I see sell pressure coming from the people who got away with cheap ride due to the bots. I see sell pressure coming potentially from people who bought in the private sale. I also see possible sell pressure coming from Holoride themselves if they need to generate revenue to grow their business. That's what you want them to do. I mean, you want them to have what they need because they have this token out now in order to build the business to increase the value of the token. That's what you as an investor are providing them, an investment, right? That's what you're doing. So I just am unsure right now, because it'd be different if the private sale was at 50 cents, or $1 or even 25 cents, but 2 cents. I mean, they paid 2 cents on the private sale. That means right now, 2 cents, man. You're talking $1.90 divided by 0.02. They're up 95x, right? Is that right? 0.02 times 95. Yeah, it's $1.90. They're up 95x right now on $4 million. So $4 million times 95 means that their profit right now is 380 million. Obviously, they'll have to wait until the liquidity gets to a point where they can, take profits without affecting the price too much. And if they have like a lot of faith in what Holoride's doing, which I personally do, I think Holoride could be huge, right? Imagine what happens to Holoride and the price of the token once the commercials start coming out, like a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever it is, that, it's going to be in vehicles, that Audis will now have augmented reality for passengers. That's going to be big. That's not just going to be a change of, that's not going to be a big thing for the company. That'll be a big thing for the world. That's something that everyone could use, making this time spent in a vehicle that is not very useful. Most people are just on their phones or looking out the window. It can suddenly become time that you enjoy, that you actually can get value out of, and that can potentially be monetized. So super interesting. Keep it in mind. We're going to have to see how all these things go, but I would say for right now, the best thing to do is just manage your risk, man. Manage your risk. That's really, really key. That's where my head's at right now. That's where I think everyone's head should be at right now. We just don't know. We don't know what the true valuation is. We just don't. There's no way to know, because part of the problem is that when it went up so high, when it came back down, a lot of the people in this area were already at a loss and did not want to sell. They wanted to wait for it to go up. And now that's what a lot of people are doing. They're waiting for it to go up to $4, $5, $6 to recover their funds. And I don't blame them, But that also means that I don't know if this is a fair value. I don't know what the fair value is. So if I don't know what the fair value is, I have to just be cautious. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't own any ride. I do own ride. And I'm probably just going to trade it for a little while until I figure out what the fair value is. I might stake some of it with EGLD and earn locked max rewards on it, because why not? Because then even if it goes down or goes up or whatever, the locked max rewards are the insurance. It's kind of covering me in either direction. And I think locked max is going to have a lot of value down the road. So I think it's worth doing that to some degree with risk tolerance in mind. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. All right. I think that's about everything. I hope this went over everything as I see it, everything that happened here. The next steps, I think, that are really, really key are the community figuring out ways that we can make sure that anytime something like this happens, if it ever happens again, the goal's got to be to try to band together somehow and recover things for people and help Elrond do that. That's what everyone should be focused on, right? It's hard to do that when you're angry and mad and, you know, you blame yourself, you blame other people, and you just don't know what to do. Like, it can be a big shock to the system. I've lost money before on trades like over a year ago. I mean, I've lost since then, but I lost big before that because I made dumb moves with high risk and I did not think of the consequences. You got to go through the failures to reach the success. That's just life. I mean, most of the most successful people on the planet have failed more times than they've succeeded. Why? Because they get up and they try again and they keep going and they learn from their mistakes. If you keep repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, you know, that's the definition of insanity. Think of it this way. If you go up to a stop sign and you start banging your head on the stop sign and you think that this is going to fill your money with pockets, well, then when you're done banging it, your head's going to hurt, your pockets are going to be empty. If you do it again, what's going to happen? Your head's going to hurt, your pocket's going to be empty. You're not going to just, money's not going to magically show up. All that you're going to end up with is your head hurt. Same kind of concept, right? If you keep doing the same thing, you expect different results, it's not going to work out. You know, you have to adjust your strategy. That's what I want everyone in the community to do, because the time is going to come where I don't think it'll be that easy for us to all even communicate the way we do now. I think the Elrond community on Twitter, I think in a year from now, is going to be a lot bigger. You know, I think it's going to grow a lot more. I think a lot more people are going to start using it. I think more projects are going to get listed. I think more people are going to want to farm. And I think that what you learn now could help shape how you invest over the next year, over the next 2 years. And those 2 years could be critical to the financial security of all of our futures. Really could. You know, we don't know what's going to happen, but this is quite possibly one of the greatest opportunities, at least in my generation, for generating wealth. And I think that everyone has a good opportunity to do it, but the key is working together. That goes to the guys running the bots, it goes to the community, it goes to the team, it goes to friends, family, everything. Work together. You know, work together, figure out a common goal, work towards it. You know, that's the way I see it. That's my opinion on everything. I think that good things can come of this, and that's going to come in the form of protection for investors on new listings, how things are going to be in the future. I think we can make this a platform. I think Elrond can make this a platform that a lot more people want to use, because there are things available here that are not available anywhere else, right? First of all, you have the best UI, easily. You have the best back-end infrastructure on the blockchain. Once fully implemented, everything's using adaptive state sharding. Transaction issues are going to disappear. They're going to be gone forever. You're just never going to see them again, right? Then, on top of that, you have protection for the people that are using the system. They feel safe when they're coming in here to put in yield, when they're coming in here to invest in a new listing. They have some semblance of security because they know that the things they're doing are going through smart and intelligent processes that limit the liability and risk of people taking advantage of those processes. I think that's pretty much it. I feel like I've covered everything. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but we're hitting 48 minutes, so I'm going to assume that everything's covered. I hope you enjoyed all the information here. If you have a better way to value ride, you know, let me know on Twitter, because I am really, really confused on the right way to value this. I really, really am. This chart activity here is just very, very difficult to get a good valuation from until you have more data. So in reality, we may not be able to get a proper valuation for a few months. You know, a few months of trading, more people coming in, see what the demand is at these prices versus 4 cents. You know what I mean? And then we see where it goes, we figure it out, and we take it from there. All right. A couple of days from now, maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after, we're going to have a TA video. That's going to be on Bitcoin, EGLD, MEX, and possibly Ride as well. Soon enough, We're going to do some TA videos on other things. We're going to go back and look at the Ethereum chart. We're going to look at the Cardano chart, Polkadot, GRT, Matic, all these other ones that are just kind of sleeping right now because the markets have all been down. We're going to take a look at all of them and just see, what are these charts looking at? Are there any opportunities there that, maybe we're missing because we're so focused on everything here? So let's take a look at everything soon. So stick around. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll catch you later. Peace.